Okay, so let's work on getting started with containers. Think of a container as like micro virtualization. So it gives us some of the same isolation that running virtual machines does, except that instead of running an entire virtual machine, we're running just enough of an operating system to do a particular task. Um, and so we do that all inside of a container. And the idea is because it's lighter weight, using smaller, less of an operating system, just enough of it to do a particular task, and then the tools needed to do that task, they can be very focused, and we can run containers instead of running services inside a full OS. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Now, containers are an evolving technology with Microsoft. They've been around a little bit longer in Linux than they have in Microsoft, but they are an evolving technology. So things are rapidly changing when it comes to containerization. So um, some of the documentation you see is not going to be accurate. So you need to make sure that you get the most current version of documentation when you're trying to use containers. Okay, let's start by installing the containers feature. So I'm going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features, and this is going to be a feature, not a role. So we're going to find containers and we're going to install it. Now, this is going to require the server to restart. It's not going to be a long install, but it does require the server to restart. So I'm going to go ahead and check the button to go and restart automatically and tell it to install. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this does the install, and after it reboots, we will pick our video back up. Okay, so our installation is finished. Our computer is rebooted. Our installation is finished. So that should be all set. So our next step is to open PowerShell. So I'm going to right click and run Windows PowerShell as administrator. Now I need to install the PowerShell module. So it's install dash, there we go, hit the right key. Install module Docker MSFT provider. And we're going to set a repository, P-O-S-I-T-O-R, a repository of PS Gallery. And then we are going to force this installation. Alright, so that will install my module for PowerShell, giving me the tools that I need to install and manage Docker, which is what we're going to use for our containers. So then it's going to be install package, and it's Docker dash provider name Docker MSFT provider. All right, now as you go through these, you may, depending on whether this has been installed before or not, get a couple of warnings you need to install NuGet or something like that. It's checking its requirements, and then it has you, or it verifies that it's missing something if you've never installed containers on here before, and I have. So I didn't get that NuGet message, but you should get a warning message saying, hey, you need to install NuGet as well. Just hit yes, and PowerShell will go ahead and do it when you install the module. Now I need to start the Docker service. So it's start service Docker, and that will get my Docker service up and running. Okay, now I can use that repository to try to find pre-built Docker containers. So all of my commands are, so they start with Docker. In fact, if I want to see them all, it's docker dash dash help. And this will show me all of the options for my Docker commands. But everything's going to start out with that Docker as our primary command. So here we go. The one we're looking at is going to be here, search. Search the Docker Hub for images. So let me clear the screen. And I want to look for a nano server image. So I'm going to do a Docker search nano server. And this will search that repository and find me, looks a little bit better, and find me all of my images related to nano server. Now this is constantly being updated. Some of these aren't maintained. There are new ones that are coming up. So there's lots of, it's kind of hit and miss, unfortunately, sometimes. And like I said, this is an emerging technology, not a mature technology yet. So let's get one direct from Microsoft. And the command is docker pull, and that's going to download an image. And I could pull one of these images here by typing in the entire name, but I'm going to pull one directly from Microsoft. So MCR, Microsoft Container Repository, .microsoft.com/windows/ nano server. Now, for a lot of them, that's all you'll need to do. But Microsoft is no longer, if you do this, let me actually generate the error message. If you do this, it'll look for that image with the default tag of latest, or give me the latest version of it. Well, Microsoft doesn't support the latest tag anymore, so you have to specify the tag that you want. And that tag is going to be the tag for the build number, and the build number of your container has to match the build number of your operating system. And mine is 1809, so I'm going to do :18, let me turn on number lock there, :1809. And so that will pull the appropriate nano server image for me, and this will download. And this is only about 100 meg image, so you can see it's downloading fairly quickly. Now this is running NanoServer, and NanoServer is an even lighter install of Windows Server than Core is. So you see it's about 100 meg download. It's going to be about 200 meg after it extracts, versus Server Core, which is going to be about a 5 gig download. So there's big differences there. NanoServer, really small, just enough of the operating system to get it functional. It doesn't even include PowerShell or WMI or anything like that. So you'll see, however, though, the NanoServer gets used for a lot of these configurations because it is such a lightweight copy of the operating system. Okay, so we've downloaded, we're extracting, and now our image is available. Let me clear the screen here. Now I can see which images I have available using the command docker space images. And that'll list all of my local images. And I only have one here, the mcr.microsoft.com/windows/nanoserver. Now I want to create a Docker container based on that image. So there's a couple of ways that I can do this. And let me give you a couple of them here. I'm going to start by creating one and running it immediately. So it's docker run -it, and that says means run interactive from the terminal. --name, and I'm going to call this container 1. I feel really creative today. And then I'm going to specify what image I want it to use. So mcr.microsoft.com/windows/nanoserver:1809. And that will create a container for me and load this image into that container. And here we are. We're actually in the separate image now. Notice I'm no longer in PowerShell. In fact, just for humor's sake, I'm going to do an IP config here, and you can see I'm 172.26.0.1 or .0.43. If I do Control P, Control PQ, that'll actually drop me back out of the container, and I'm now back in PowerShell on my host system. And if I do an IP config, you'll see that I've got a different IP address, but I do have one that matches the default gateway of my container. So my container has this address. It's going to use this as a default gateway, which now I've got a virtual Ethernet adapter here for the default gateway, and then my connection out. So basically, I have a functional container. Now my container is still up and running. This container, by the way, is a Microsoft build container, so there's really nothing in it except NanoServer. So let me clear the screen, and I'm going to do docker ps-a, which is going to say show me all Docker containers or all Docker processes. Remember, this was started on Linux. It was originally, Docker was built for Linux, and so it's going to use some Linux conventions here. So here's my container ID, my image, the command that is currently running, when it was created, what the status is. It's up right now. It's been up for about a minute, and the container. To go back into it, I can use the command docker attach, and then the name. Now, normally Windows commands are not case sensitive. This is a Linux command at its heart, so it is case sensitive. So if I do container1 without a capital, it's going to throw a fit. No such container. If I do container1 with a capital, which is what I have over here, bingo, I'm into my new container. And remember, it's Control PQ to detach from the container but leave it up and running. I can also exit, but that actually drops my container. So now if I do a docker ps-a, you can see that I still have the container. Now it's exited, so it's no longer running. So if I try to attach it, it's going to give me an error saying it's not started yet. I can start it using the command docker start container1, and that will bring it online. And now I can do docker ps-a, and I'll see that my container1 is currently up. All right, I can create multiple containers based off of the same image. So let me do one that's going to create it without attaching it to it. So docker create, and I just lost my train of thought. Let's do name container2, and then we're going to do the same image, which was mcr dot Microsoft, there we go, .com /Windows /nanoserver :1809. Okay, and that created a new container for me. So now if I do docker ps-a, I should see a couple of containers. One of them was created but not up. One of them was up. So it's two different containers, even though they're based on the same image. It's almost like imaging a system, right? Except that I imaged the container and then I just created a new instance of, or a new container based on that image. All right. At this point, things are up and running and I can start doing whatever I want to with my containers. Remember, the Nano server is kind of like a root build server from Microsoft. You'd modify the image if you wanted to. Most of the time, what we're going to do is we're going to find container images that have what we want using the docker search command, and then we're going to use those containers. And then we can manage them, customize them however needed. But very, very rarely are we going to actually build our own container from scratch. That's something that developers are going to do a little bit more. All right, I need to shut down my container1. So I'm going to do docker stop container1. And it stops container1. So if I do docker ps-a, we're going to see that both of them created and exited. Now, one other little thing here. Let me clear the screen. Docker, if you just do docker ps, it will only show you active containers. Okay, so that's a real quick overview of how to install Docker and create containers. Now, containers have some really interesting possibilities, but the technology is not mature yet. So, if you want to start playing with it, we've given you enough that hopefully you can start playing with Docker containers. But if you are going to start using them in a production environment, you're going to need to be a little careful with it right now. They do have some great possibilities, and if Microsoft continues to develop their container support, it may be a very powerful tool for networking in the future. But at the moment, it's still one of those emerging technologies, so make sure you treat it as such.